2024 WWE Draft has come and gone, and it got roasted by pretty much everyone. The general consensus online was that this draft essentially changed nothing. A lot of people felt like the WWE was wasting time by making picks on TV that didn't actually change anything about Raw or SmackDown. And although I do think that a lot of the criticism online about the WWE Draft is fair, I think that we're being a tiny bit harsh, because there were actually a lot more superstar changing shows than we actually are giving this draft credit for. So today we're going to be talking all about the 2024 WWE Draft. We're going to be talking about the fundamental problems with the current draft format. We're going to talk about how they can make it better, but then we're also going to go through every single pick where a superstar change shows, and we're going to give that a letter grade. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's get to it. One of the fundamental criticisms that people have of the 2024 draft was that they felt like it didn't change anything. They felt like the WWE was wasting our time by making picks that didn't fundamentally change anything about our viewing experience. And Triple H at the start of the draft laid the groundwork that that's what they were going to do when he said that, hey, these brands should really focus on protecting the assets that are already part of their show. So don't be surprised if they draft members of the roster that are already theirs. And that's all fine and dandy, but this isn't real. Like, this is sports entertainment. The number one focus shouldn't be trying to make this like a real draft, trying to make this like the NFL draft. The fundamental focus should be entertainment. And the entertainment of the draft is the allure, the mystery, the questions that viewers have about what superstar is going to go to what show, what friendships and tag teams are going to get broken up, what couples might get broken up, what factions are going to go from one team to another, and what champions are going to have to start appearing on different nights. All of that was removed from this year's draft. Look at round 3. Round 3 might be one of the most egregious rounds and honestly one of the best examples of the WWE wasting our time. We have LA Knight, who was already on SmackDown, staying on SmackDown. Ricochet, who was already on Raw, staying on Raw. The Bloodline, staying on SmackDown. They were already on SmackDown. And Sheamus technically was part of SmackDown, but he'd been appearing on Raw for the previous 2 weeks since returning from injury, so pretty much everyone saw him as a member of the Raw roster anyway. Look, he's staying on Raw. This changed nothing about the viewing experience of the viewer. And you might think, hey, it's not a big deal, it's one round. And I guess I could say, sure, fair. This took about 7 to 9 minutes to get through this entire round. But in those 7 to 9 minutes, they could have had a match. They could have had backstage segment. They could have had a promo. They could have done anything that actually provided value to me as a viewer, that actually progressed storyline, something that actually provided value to me as somebody that decided to turn on that show that day. This, as it stands, provides me, you, and everyone around the world zero value because nothing changes. They're telling us that nothing changed. So why would I stick around? Why would I want to watch round 4 if I'm being told that you might not see anything change in future rounds? And part of the problem, as I alluded to earlier, was the WWE trying to be too real with this draft and trying to emulate things like the NFL draft, NHL, NBA, and real sports. But frankly, if they're looking to emulate the NFL or the other real world drafts, then they should only focus the draft on drafting NXT rookies. That should be the only focus of the draft. And yes, when you try to emulate something real, you have to treat it real, I guess, because yes, if I am the manager of Raw, I want to protect Imperium. I would like to keep Imperium, but this isn't real. It doesn't matter. You don't need to tell us that it has to be real. You don't need to tell us that these brands are wanting to protect these assets. Just don't draft them. In previous drafts, we were told that everything was random. And of course, we knew that it wasn't random. We knew that all of the picks were predetermined, but at the very least, at home, we were meant to believe that it was random so that anything could happen, which meant that we were excited every single time that a new superstar was picked. And the only people that were picked in previous WWE drafts are people that are actually switching shows. So yes, it is real that a WWE manager is gonna wanna protect their assets, but we don't care about that realism when it comes to the draft. We just care about exciting picks that actually changed our viewing experience. When CM Punk was drafted to Raw, or Triple H to SmackDown, or Bobby Lashley from ECW, then like that was exciting. You know what wouldn't be exciting is if ECW came out and said, hey, we want to protect Bobby Lashley, or Raw said, hey, we want to protect Triple H. It's realistic that they would do that, but again, we're looking for entertainment. We're not looking to have the WWE emulate these real sports, because that just doesn't provide value to us, in my opinion. I also felt like this year the WWE focused too much on, again, trying to create this real atmosphere by having the War Room, which people were just clowning online. Instead of the War Room, they should have done what they've done in previous years and shown the backstage locker room, because then we can see the stress that the superstars are going through as names are being called. But instead, we're just watching pre-recorded footage of JBL talking to Adam Pearce, which again doesn't really do anything for us. So all in all, if you want to fix the draft, just go back to the semblance of randomness. We know it's not random. We know that the WWE is going to make these predetermined picks, but at the very least, when we're seeing picks actually be announced, we're seeing picks that are actually adding value to our viewing experience, because they're actually switching shows. The only picks they should show on TV are picks that are switching shows, in my opinion. Holy shit! Oh, that's cool. Holy shit! That, my friends, was a preview of this week's Wrestling is Cool Match Club, where you all get to vote on Patreon on what matches Sancho and I react to. This week, we have an awesome slate of matches for you on Patreon. We have Cody Rhodes versus Sammy Guevara, a ladder match for the TNT title in AEW Dynamite. We have another ladder match between Jeff Hardy and The Undertaker in 2002. And we have Dominik Dijakovic, aka Dijak, taking on Keith Lee at NXT TakeOver Portland in 2019. Not only that, but we have the WrestleMania 27 watch along, all 4 hours there for you. You're gonna get the Raw review, the SmackDown review, and the current episode of the Wrestling is Cool podcast is already up and available for you. In my opinion, we are giving so much value to our patrons, more than ever before. So I encourage you to check it out over at patreon.com/SantiZap. Again, that's patreon.com/SantiZap. I'll put the link at the very top of the description, or it'll be the link in the pinned comment. I encourage you to come check it out, even if it's for 1 month. I'm confident that you're gonna fall in love with it. It's just more wrestling content that I can't show here on YouTube. Okay, I'm done with the sellout, but back to the video. I also have a question. This might have just been me, but maybe it was the WWE creating false expectations. I really thought that the WWE said that NXT was going to be part of this draft, not just as part of the draft pool to be called up to the main roster. They kind of made it seem like NXT was going to be able to draft main roster superstars to go to Tuesday nights. And I feel like that would have been fantastic. There are a lot of WWE superstars right now that are just not getting great TV time on Raw or SmackDown that really could have benefited from going down to NXT, where the WWE could have really gotten value out of them by using them to help mold and shape the next generation of WWE superstars, all while still giving those people TV time. But instead, this year, NXT once again was relegated to just being a draft pool, but maybe I misunderstood. I really thought that the WWE said that NXT was going to be able to draft. And I think that they would have really added value, because we saw what they did with Baron Corbin. We've seen WWE superstars go down to NXT, not only help elevate NXT talent, but also elevate themselves so that they're worthy of coming back and earning TV time on the main roster. So ultimately, I do think it's a shame that NXT wasn't better integrated into the show. But now we're actually going to go through every single pick that actually switched shows. We're going to talk briefly about them, and then I'll give them a score. We had Carmelo Hayes being called up from NXT to SmackDown, and I do think that this is a brilliant move. I give this an A+. Carmelo Hayes had done everything that there was to do in NXT. There was nothing left for him there. It was time to be called up, and they called him up in a fantastic way by instantly putting him in the ring with Cody Rhodes. I really think that that was a fantastic way to yell to the world that this is one of the megastars that NXT has been building for you and is now a megastar on the main roster. I think that the drafting of Carmelo Hayes, whether he would have gone to Raw or SmackDown, would have gotten an A+. Braun Breaker being drafted to SmackDown to Raw, on the other hand, this doesn't actually make a heck of a whole lot of sense, considering the WWE spent, what, like a month and a half draft close to 2 months on a storyline of SmackDown and Raw trying to sign Braun Breaker, and Braun Breaker eventually signing with SmackDown because Nick Aldis is such a great negotiator. Well, why do that storyline if you're just gonna draft them to the other show in less than like a month after being signed to SmackDown? It completely did away with that storyline of Nick Aldis doing everything in his power to be able to sign Braun Breaker. So it gets a C because it completely undermines a previous WWE storyline that had literally just happened. Nia Jax, on the other hand, I think was a great addition to SmackDown, but too big of a loss to Raw, which is actually why I have her as a C, even though I love Nia Jax. I think that she's fantastic. But when I looked, at the very least, when she was drafted at the landscape of the Raw women's roster, losing Nia Jax was such a big loss. They just lost Rhea Ripley, and they desperately needed somebody that could be a true heel on that show. And Raw losing Nia Jax and having her be sent over to SmackDown actually didn't make a tremendous amount of sense for me. Sheamus is on here really just as a technicality because, in my opinion, he didn't really change shows. He was appearing on Raw before the draft. I understand that he was technically part of SmackDown last year, but since he's come back, he's been appearing on Raw. He gets drafted by Raw, so in my eyes, this didn't really change anything. But I think this is cool because Sheamus actually fits on Raw the best based on the current roster that is on Raw, because there's those beefy, meaty dudes that are over there that are slapping meat, and Sheamus is one of those meat slappers. I look at the likes of like Bronson Reed, now Braun Breaker. We look at Gunther, Drew McIntyre. He's just too perfect to be on Raw. Andrade also gets a C because of literally the exact same reason that I gave Braun Breaker a C. It doesn't make sense for him to have been part of the storyline of Raw and SmackDown trying to do everything to sign Andrade, only for Andrade to just get changed shows at the end of the day. I think there just wasn't enough foresight during the storyline of, the signing of Andrade with Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce. Honestly, like, it might not even be anyone's fault. It might just be poor timing. But again, having him switch shows completely undermines the previous storyline of him being signed by Raw, which is why I'm going to give this a C. Kiana James is one of the NXT call-ups, and I think that this is brilliant. It was surprising because I do think that Kiana James is actually a really great addition to Monday Night Raw, but I thought that Blair Davenport would have been the natural heel that they would have gone with first. Blair Davenport did eventually get drafted, so I was right in that regard, but Kiana James is a fantastic addition. One of the problems right now with Raw and SmackDown, literally across the entire main roster, is a lack of natural born heels, like people that can be heels for their whole career, and Kiana James is one of those. When I look at Raw right now, really, there's none. Nia Jax was it, because even Rhea Ripley at this point is just too damn likable and is being turned babyface, and we look at Damage Control that did go to Raw, and all of them at some point or another have been babyfaces as well. I think Kiana James can be that career heel for Monday Night Raw. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn going to Raw is going to be really good for them so long as they're actually utilized. I think they can take that TV time that Indy Hartwell and Candace LeRae were getting. Raw has just more time, which has allowed the women, the mid-card of the women's division, to flourish a heck of a lot more than the mid-card division of the women's division on SmackDown. Baron Corbin being recalled back up to SmackDown is an A+. I don't understand why this wasn't announced on TV. This was actually the coolest pick of the draft day one. I don't know why they just did it on Twitter, but he's a great example as to why NXT should be allowed to draft people, because he went down to NXT, revitalized his entire career, and now everyone's excited to see Baron Corbin again on their main roster TV. Damage Control being sent to Raw is a major lifeline to Raw. The Raw women's division desperately needed this infusion of talent, especially on the heel side of things. So I'm definitely giving this an A+, especially after losing Nia Jax. Bringing in Damage Control to fill that void that Nia Jax left, it was key. It was super important. And it also gives us the opportunity, if they were to break up Damage Control, to have potentially 3 to 4 main event caliber women on Monday Night Raw. And over the last year, most of the main event caliber talent in terms of the women's division has been over on SmackDown. So this was a great get for Raw. Shinsuke Nakamura going to SmackDown, I'm going to give a C. This makes no sense. Like, Shinsuke Nakamura was barely getting TV time on Raw, but at the very least, he was getting some. If he were to get drafted anywhere, It should have been NXT. They should have gave him the Baron Corbin treatment on NXT. And Shinsuke is one of the greatest NXT superstars of all time. He could have gone down there. He could have had an awesome feud with Trick Williams or literally anybody from the NXT roster to help build them up, while at the same time rebuilding himself up for a Baron Corbin-like recall up. Similar to Carmelo Hayes, Elia Dragonov does get an A+. Nothing else for him to do on NXT. It just made sense to bring him up. He's going to have an amazing set of matches. Really, this gets a full A+ because they made the right choice in terms of what show to put him on. It needed to be Raw because Gunther's on Raw. That's all. That's the only reason why this gets that extra little notch on the A. For those that don't know, Elia Dragonov and Gunther have had wars in the past that I consider to be some of the best matches of the entire decade. And now that they're both on the same show, we're literally one episode of Raw away from getting that feud started. Piper Niven and Chelsea Green going to SmackDown doesn't really make any sense because SmackDown has not done a great job of giving the women's mid-card division TV time, and they were getting at least some TV time on Raw. I don't think that they're going to get much TV time over on SmackDown. I don't think this made sense. The Lara Valkyrie pick for Raw makes a tremendous amount of sense. Again, we're rebuilding that Raw women's division that desperately needed them, and I think that she's going to be a great addition over there. Similar to Carmelo Hayes and Elia Dragonov, she's already done everything in NXT. She's like the prototypical NXT call-up. This was a great choice. This one to me made absolutely no sense. Indy Hartwell and Candace Laray, I understand why they were drafted over there because DIY was drafted over there, but they were actually getting TV time, valuable TV time over on Raw that I know they're not going to get over on SmackDown. They were getting 5 to 6 minutes of TV time on Raw every single episode as they told their story with Maxine Dupree, and they're going to disappear on SmackDown. I am confident of that. I'm going to give this one an F. The Final Testament going to Raw, I think, is a good choice for them. I think that they were tapped out on SmackDown. I felt like Karrion Kross has had a feud with just about everyone that he is worthy of having a feud with on SmackDown. Let's give them a new home on Monday Night Raw with some extra TV time. And also, they're going between NXT and Raw, it seems. And that makes sense because Raw's currently on the USA Network, the same network as NXT. So sure, why not? I like this pick. It gets an A. Giovanni, I feel like this is just a Band-Aid before he gets released. Maybe I'm entirely wrong and this guy just goes off on SmackDown, but I just don't see it, man. I'm nervous for Giovanni Vinci. I really felt like they should have kept him on Raw so that he could have been a babyface in a feud against Imperium, because what's he gonna do on SmackDown? There's nothing for him there. I'm just realizing that on this list, I don't have DIY, but I'm gonna give DIY and New Catch Republic the same grade anyway, because really they're just swapping places. I'm gonna give them a B. They really don't move the needle in the tag team division because you're taking the really talented DIY and moving them to SmackDown, and you're taking the really talented New Catch Republic and moving them to Raw. I guess it makes sense to move New Catch Republic over to Raw because they're feuding with the Final Testament, so I guess I'll give it an extra thumbs up for that. But neither of the picks really move the needle in the tag team division as is, so they both get Bs. Tegan Nox also gets an F for being sent over to SmackDown. She's just not gonna get TV time on SmackDown. She got like a sliver of TV time on a 3-hour show. You really think that they're gonna make any sort of effort to give her TV time on a show that has an hour less? No chance. F. Dijak to Raw, brilliant decision. Also a brilliant decision to keep him with Elia Dragonov because they can continue to have the amazing wars that they've been having. I love the fact that he was sent to the 3-hour show as opposed to the 2-hour show. So this gets an A+ for me. And then there's Apollo Crews, similar to like Tegan Nox. Actually, like I can't even compare it because Apollo Crews was getting no TV time at all. I don't even know why this was even a pick. All right, folks, those are my thoughts on this year's draft. You guys let me know, how would you make the draft better? Maybe you like the format. Let me know though. But that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.